There's something you've never said out loud, but your body has been reacting to it for a long time. It's not that you don't work hard. It's not that you don't understand how money moves. It's that there are moments where everything is aligned, where progress is real, where something is about to land, and right before it does, something inside you subtly tightens. It doesn't happen in your thoughts. It happens faster than that. Somewhere in your chest, or just beneath it, there's a brief contraction, almost like your system hesitates before receiving what it was just moving toward. And that hesitation doesn't feel like fear. It feels older, quieter, like a limit you never consciously agreed to, but keep encountering anyway. What makes this harder to explain is that you're not avoiding effort. You've done more than most. You've planned, adjusted, pushed through, stayed consistent in ways other people don't. And yet the results don't fully match the level you can feel yourself capable of reaching. Something builds, and then something redirects it, just enough to keep you from crossing a certain threshold. And the strange part is, you've felt that threshold, not as a number, not as a goal, but as a boundary in your own system. Something that turns you back before you can fully step into what's available. Not dramatically, just enough that it repeats. Quietly, precisely. If that felt familiar, even for a second, that exact reaction is why this reached you. Because that response didn't start with your thoughts. It didn't start with your choices. It started somewhere deeper in your system. And something in you already signaled that it was ready to be seen. Not by logic, by something that tracks your field more precisely than your mind ever could. What's been affecting your financial pattern isn't sitting on the surface of your behavior. It's running underneath it. And the part of you that noticed that is the part this transmission is already working with. What brought you here isn't random movement through content. It's precision. There is a layer of your field that has been approaching a threshold for some time now, and the moment it reached a certain level of readiness, something responded. Not in a visible way, not in a way your mind would track, but in the way your attention shifted, just enough to land here, at this exact point. The Arcturian Council does not engage with your system through general messages. They observe patterns across timelines, across lineages, across the subtle architecture of your energy body, and they intervene only when a specific layer becomes accessible. What they are responding to in you right now is not your effort, not your strategy, not even your current situation. It is a deeper signal, coming from a layer beneath all of that. The part of your system that has been carrying something older than your personal experience. You may have noticed this in indirect ways. The sense that your reactions don't always match your intentions. That your body responds to money, to opportunity, to expansion, before your mind has time to interpret it. A tightening when something comes easily. A subtle alertness when things begin to stabilize. Not fear exactly, but a readiness, as if something expects that stability won't last. That response is not being generated by your current life alone. It's being echoed through your nervous system from a deeper imprint, one that lives in the causal body, the layer of your field where lineage patterns, inherited contracts, and pre-conscious coding are stored. And that is the layer the Council is engaging with right now. You may feel small shifts already. A drop in the shoulders, a change in your breath, a quiet awareness settling in your chest or behind your eyes. That's not imagination. That's your system adjusting just enough to receive what's being introduced. Because what is about to be addressed is not something your mind needs to understand first. It's something your field needs to recognize, and it's already happening. You've been living with the visible side of this for a long time, even if you never had the language for it. It shows up in the way progress never quite stabilizes, in how something begins to build, then quietly shifts direction before it fully lands. You move forward, but there's always a subtle correction happening underneath, as if your system is recalibrating you back into a narrower range. It's there when money increases, but the pressure doesn't release with it. When something clears, and almost immediately something else fills that space. When an opportunity gets close enough that you can feel what it would change. And then, without a clear moment, it's no longer available. Not dramatically removed. Just no longer open in the same way. And what makes it harder is that you don't lack awareness. You've paid attention. You've adjusted behaviors, tracked patterns, refined your decisions. You've done the work most people avoid, but the repetition doesn't respond the way it should, given the level of precision you've brought to it. That's the part that creates the quiet confusion. Not, why isn't this working, but why does it keep resetting like this? There's also that underlying tone, not loud, not constant, but always present somewhere in the background. A subtle sense that others are moving through something more open, more fluid, while your system seems to operate under a different set of conditions. Not worse, just constrained in a way that's difficult to fully articulate. If something in your chest softened while hearing that, even slightly, even just a small exhale that felt more complete than usual, go to the comments right now and type 777. Don't pause to analyze it. 777 is the completion signal in the Arcturian numerical system, the point where a cycle stops repeating because it has finally been seen at the correct layer. When you type it, you're not initiating anything new. You're marking the moment your system recognized what it's been carrying. Type 777 and come back. What you've been experiencing isn't a surface-level pattern repeating randomly. It's a structured response, built into your system long before your personal choices had a chance to shape it. Not as a belief, not as a mindset, but as a code. One that lives simultaneously in your causal body and in the biological layer of your physical form. There was a point in your lineage, not recently, not within memory, where survival conditions became so intense that your ancestors' systems had to recalibrate in order to stay alive. Not psychologically, biologically. Their nervous systems adapted to constant threat. Their perception narrowed. Their bodies learned to treat uncertainty as danger and expansion as risk. And that adaptation didn't disappear when conditions changed. It was recorded through epigenetic processes, through methylation patterns on specific gene sequences. That survival calibration was passed forward. Not as a story you were told, but as a signal your body inherited. The sequences responsible for recognizing opportunity, tolerating risk, and holding expansion without contraction were gradually suppressed. Not removed, just dimmed beneath a stronger directive: preserve, reduce, contain. At the same time, in the energetic architecture of your field, that same directive was imprinted into the 12-strand DNA template, the multidimensional structure that holds your original abundance signature. The Arcturian Council refers to this as the poverty code installation, a frequency overlay that compresses the natural expression of those higher strands, forcing your system to operate from a survival baseline, even when survival is no longer required. This is why the experience feels so specific. Because when something enters your field, money, opportunity, recognition, it doesn't pass through a neutral system. It encounters a filter, a reticular activating system trained to prioritize threat over possibility. A solar plexus center that has been subtly contracted, broadcasting a lower frequency signal into your electromagnetic field. And that signal doesn't repel abundance completely, It just distorts how it arrives, how long it stays, and how deeply it can root. So what you've been calling inconsistency is actually interference. What you've been trying to correct through behavior has been operating beneath behavior entirely. And the reason it hasn't responded to effort is because effort doesn't reach this layer. But now, this layer is no longer hidden. This is where the layer most people never reach begins to open. Because what the Council is working within you right now is not just the presence of that code, but the exact location where it first anchored. Not in your childhood, not in your personal history, but in the original point in your lineage, where survival compression entered the template and reshaped the way your system processes reality. And this is why the shift doesn't start in your thoughts. It starts in your field. You may notice it already. A subtle pressure at the crown, or a quiet movement behind your eyes, like something descending before you can interpret it. That's the entry point. The Arcturian field doesn't move laterally through logic. It enters vertically, through the upper gateway of your system, and begins to move downward through the architecture that has been holding this pattern in place. As it reaches your heart center, there's often a moment of hesitation. Not because the heart is blocked, but because it has been holding the bridge between two different realities. One where expansion is natural, and one where it must be regulated. You may feel a soft tightening there, or a sudden stillness. Let it be there without trying to change it. That's the system being located, not resisted. From there, the movement continues into the solar plexus, the center most directly involved in your relationship with resource, control, and the felt sense of whether it is safe to have more. This is where the poverty code expresses itself most visibly in the body, not as a dramatic block, but as a low, constant contraction that slightly limits how much your system is willing to receive at once. You might feel warmth there now, or a gentle pulsing just above the navel, like something is being adjusted at a very specific frequency. Then, deeper still, into the sacral center, where inherited emotional memory is stored, the layer that carries the unprocessed survival responses of your lineage. This is where the nervous system echo becomes most tangible. Polyvagal responses that keep your body cycling between subtle alertness and incomplete rest. Dopamine patterns that never fully register reward as safe. All of it tracing back to a deeper energetic compression that has been sitting here, waiting for this level of access. If you feel even a slight shift moving through your body as you hear this, a warmth, a release, a quiet recognition that didn't come from thought, go to the comments now and type 144. Don't pause to understand it. 144 is the light grid activation code, the frequency marker used when a system begins reconnecting to its original signal through a collective field. When you type it, you're not asking for anything. You're signaling that the recalibration has already started in you. Type 144 and come back. Because what's happening here is not just awareness, it's a sequence, a holographic ancestral regeneration process that is beginning to trace the pattern back to its origin point. Not to analyze it, but to dissolve it at the level it was written. And this is where the weight of it becomes clearer, because what you've been trying to solve was never located where you were looking. You've been applying precision at the behavioral level, refining decisions, adjusting strategies, becoming more aware than most people ever do, and still feeling like something underneath kept redirecting the outcome, just enough to keep you within a certain range. That's not because you missed something. It's because the layer you were working on was already functioning correctly. Your actions weren't the problem. Your discipline wasn't the problem. Even your beliefs, the ones you've spent time observing and shifting, were not the deepest source of what you were experiencing. They were responses to something older, something that didn't originate with you. And when a system is running on inherited survival data, it doesn't respond to effort the way you expect it to. Because from the perspective of that system, effort is not meant to expand you. It's meant to protect you. So when momentum builds, when something begins to open, the body doesn't interpret that as success. It interprets it as exposure, as the moment just before something could go wrong. That's why the contraction happens before the result fully lands. That's why the nervous system shifts before your mind has time to register what's happening. It's not hesitation in the usual sense. It's a preloaded response, triggered by a frequency your system still reads as unsafe, even when it's exactly what you've been working toward. And this is also why the exhaustion has felt deeper than just being tired. Because on some level, you've been carrying not only your own effort, but the unresolved tension of a lineage that never had the chance to experience stability without threat. That tension has been running quietly in the background, shaping how much you allow, how long you hold it, and how quickly your system returns to a state of alert. Which means the pattern wasn't just repeating, it was being maintained. And now that it's been located this precisely, something else becomes clear. This isn't something you can outwork. It's something that has to be released from the level it was installed. And that process has already started. This is the point where it stops being something you're listening to and starts becoming something your system is actively participating in. Because once a pattern is located at this level, the field doesn't stay passive. It responds. And that response is already moving through you, whether your mind is tracking it or not. You may feel it as a shift in temperature, a quiet warmth building in your chest or just above your navel, or a pressure at the crown that wasn't there before, like something gently pressing downward. For some, it's not physical at all. It's a sudden stillness, like the usual background tension has stepped aside for a moment. However it shows up, it's not random. It's the system adjusting in real time to a frequency it hasn't fully held before. What the Arcturian Council is doing in this phase is not surface clearing. They are entering the causal layer directly, where the original compression was written into the template, and beginning the dissolution from that point. Not by removing something forcefully, but by reintroducing the original signal that existed before the overlay was applied. And when that original signal becomes active again, the code that was suppressing it no longer has the same structure to hold itself in place. This is why the release can feel unfamiliar. Because your system isn't just letting go of tension, it's recalibrating what it recognizes as safe. The solar plexus begins to expand slightly beyond its previous boundary. The sacral center stops bracing against incoming flow. The root no longer tightens automatically when something stable appears. It's subtle, but it's precise. And as that recalibration moves through, you may notice something unexpected. Not a surge of motivation, not a dramatic emotional shift, but a quiet absence of the usual resistance. A moment where something that would have triggered contraction simply doesn't. That absence is not emptiness, it's space. Space that wasn't available before because it was occupied by a response that no longer has the same hold. The nervous system begins to follow that shift. The vagus nerve, which has been holding your baseline closer to alert than rest, starts to register a different signal. Not because you forced it to relax, but because the field it's responding to has changed. And when that happens, your body doesn't have to choose differently. It naturally starts to. This is what it feels like when the process becomes active. Not imagined, not visualized, but happening. And it's happening now. Let the system settle for a moment without trying to interpret it. You don't need to measure what just shifted. Your body already registered it in a way that doesn't require language. The important part is not how it felt in intensity, but that it happened at all. Because once this layer is touched, it doesn't return to the same configuration. Over the next phase, especially within the next 72 hours. You may notice subtle changes that don't look dramatic from the outside, but feel different from within. A situation that would normally create pressure doesn't. A moment where you expect contraction stays open just long enough to notice the difference. A thought that would usually lead to tension passes without anchoring. These are not small things. They are signs that the system is no longer defaulting to the same instruction. And when that internal response shifts, the external pattern begins to reorganize around it. Not instantly, not all at once, but in ways that feel less forced. A conversation opens without you pushing it. A path that was unclear becomes visible without effort. Not because you suddenly changed your behavior, but because the field that your behavior moves through is no longer configured the same way. If something in you recognizes that, not as an idea, but as a quiet knowing somewhere below thought, go to the comments now and type 520. Don't think about it. 520 is the alignment code for closing a cycle that didn't begin with you, but completes through you. When you type it, you're not creating the shift. You're marking the moment your system stopped carrying it forward. Type 520 and come back, because what this transmission opened is not the final layer. You may have already noticed, even before this, that your life doesn't respond uniformly across all areas. Things move in certain directions with ease. Connections, ideas, even personal growth, they expand. But when it comes specifically to material flow, to financial stabilization, something operates differently. Not blocked completely, just selectively restricted. That difference is not accidental. It's not leftover from the same pattern you just touched. It comes from a separate structure, one that wasn't inherited in the same way, but placed with intention at a deeper level of your field. A layer that allows movement in most directions, while holding one channel in place. And now that this layer has shifted, that one becomes visible. The field is already preparing to move into it.